Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today, wrapping up the John Draper Crunch stories. I officially retired some John Draper Crunch stories about, I don't know whether it was a year ago, it was some length of time ago, and in fact it occurred because I had told this story to a small group, including folks who I had not met previously, and one of these folks decided to tell a very intimate and detailed story associated with sexual abuse, and it was all very uncomfortable, and my friends who were there made me agree not to tell these stories in the future. What I'm going to do is put in some audio from my initial telling of my first experience with John Draper Crunch. Actually, it's not my initial telling, it's my last telling, in any case. And that leads into this podcast. So you probably already heard that audio, now you're waiting to hear the actual story. When I was writing, maybe writing's not the right term, when I was doing the initial part of Field of Chaos, when I was writing antiviral software, this kind of thing, I got in contact with a lot of folk, and a lot of folk got in contact with me. And one of these individuals was a fellow by the name of Anson McDougall. Now, that's a great name. I thoroughly recommend, if ever you want to make a fictitious character in a novel, just call him Anson McDougall. And I'm almost positive that Anson McDougall is actually listening to these podcasts, because what I find is lurking in the shadows, there tend to be a wide variety of folk from my past that continue to listen to my stuff. So Anson, if you're listening in, this one's for you. Anson McDougall was on the fringes of my friendship group. His mother was a high school teacher, a friend of mine's mother was a high school teacher, and also he's one of the few individuals who I've ever been contacted by the police associated with. Apparently he'd done some manipulation of some hacking texts or whatever, caused a rather nasty explosion, and the police just wanted to know what kind of character reference I would give for Anson McDougall. It was quite a curious character. He would occasionally pose as his own sister in telephone calls, and he's one of the few individuals that my mother, who is pretty proper and correct in terms of, the Australian matriarchal archetype, would say fuck off to when Anson called. She'd just pick up the phone, pause for 10 seconds and just say fuck off, Anson. Because either he was impersonating his sister, or it's just heavy breathing over the phone. I mean, this guy was basically obsessed with calling my house and doing a wide variety of things. And once per chance, well, let's just say once initially, I had the opportunity to meet Anson McDougall. My friend had returned after 6 months away, disappeared off the face of the earth, with another individual who also is a podcast listener, but again waiting in the shadows. And through this meeting, I decided that I'd meet up with Anson McDougall as well to bring all these folk together. He was a very softly spoken young man, very slight of build, just, like a hanger-on, like someone who wasn't really present, but just hung on. And through my interactions with Anson McDougall, there were always concerns associated with mental health. There were concerns that he'd done things like called through death threats to my house. Generally, his ability to talk to either my mother or brothers in an inappropriate fashion made me feel that there was just a slight mental health issue. After age about 17, I was relatively thankful to have nothing more to do with Anson McDougall, except when Crunch arrived in Canberra with his flunkies. And as his flunkies and Crunch were wandering out to the streets of Canberra, I said to one of his flunkies, I don't really care who you bring back, but just don't bring back this cat called Anson McDougall. Because I was living on campus at the time, I really didn't need that kind of emotional energy around me. Lo and behold, Crunch came back with his flunkies, and they brought Anson McDougall with them. Like, of all the people, Canberra has a population of 300,000 people. Crunch and his flunkies were able to find Anson McDougall and bring him back to my dorm room. And Anson was, he was relatively chilled. He said to me, it's cool that you invited me back here to meet John Draper Crunch, hacking legend. I kind of smiled at him and I said, yes, Anson, yes. And also, Crunch was carrying a whole lot of San Franciscan acid that he was bringing back. And the only person who actually accepted any of this acid was Anson McDougall. And I can't recall, I think either Anson told me or one of Crunch's flunkies had told me, associated with what Anson was doing at the time. I was in college at the time. Anson had become a folk singer. His whole thing was getting up on stage, sitting down, strumming a few notes, and then crying really heavily, deep sobbing which he could do for upwards of 30 minutes. And that was his folk music bit. He had found his audience. Young women would sit there and just watch this guy sob uncontrollably. And that was his thing. That was Anson McDougall. That was the last I ever saw of Anson McDougall. And quite frankly, Anson, as you listen in now, please don't get in contact. Just be happy in the fact that you're a lurker to these podcasts. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.